Howdy, howdy, what is going on? Welcome back to Back of the Endzone. This is episode 6. I'm Josh Ryzik here with Brian Koleski, and today's episode I am extremely stoked for. I don't know about Brian, but we're going to dive into some Ohio State football today, dive into this upcoming season. The spring game is on Saturday for the Ohio State Buckeyes.
Watch them get beat by Michigan a third straight year. We'll see about that one.
Goofy. We'll see what happens, but there's a lot to be excited about with Ohio State this year, with a lot of returners. There's a couple guys that it sucks because obviously losing C.J. Stroud, losing 3 guys on the offensive line to the draft, a couple defensive guys, but not many. But our defense is struggling. And
then we'll dive into some more draft stuff. It's coming up. We'll post this episode on Thursday. That'll mark 2 weeks to go before the draft starts. It's coming up quickly. We can dive into some of the there are more teams looking to possibly trade up with Arizona at 3, and we can talk about the Aaron Rodgers and Jet stuff. I mean, they still haven't made a trade, man. So
it's going to be interesting to see what happens.
Yeah.
But right now, let's dive into some Buckeye football, baby. All right, so the first thing that I really want to talk about, especially as an Ohio State fan, is for the first time in technically 3 years, Ohio State is going to have a new quarterback behind the reins, leading this offense. And it's interesting because a lot of fans want Devin Brown to be a quarterback. A lot of fans want Kyle McCord to be starting quarterback week 1. And for me personally, right now I'm on the McCord train. McCord already has so much experience under his belt and has seen so much experience in games. And Devin Brown has only been in 2 games last year, and he only had 1 rush attempt, no pass attempts. And I just feel like right now Kyle McCord has the edge over him due to that. And there was news this morning that Devin Brown is actually having surgery on his finger. Yeah. So unfortunately, Ohio State's not going to see him play in the spring game.
When it comes to the Ohio State's quarterback battle, I'm not worried. I mean, ever since Urban Meyer, even back to Urban Meyer's days, as coach, they've always been fine at the quarterback position. It's kind of like Bama, ever since Saban's been there, quarterback hasn't been the issue. So I feel like whoever you go with, or maybe if you go with a young gun who might come in and like a freshman or something that might, come in and wow everybody. You never know. But I guess I got to agree with you. I mean, I don't know that much about these 2 guys, I guess, because I'm not as inversed or I'm not as well knowledgeable about Ohio State football as you, because you are a fan. But I guess I would have to lean Kyle McCord. I mean, you told me before that he was Marvin Harrison Jr.'s quarterback in high school.
So they won 3 straight state championships together.
And so you already kind of have that chemistry already. And Marvin Harrison, he's only going to be there for 1 more year. He's going to be
potentially top 5 draft pick next year.
If it were my decision right now, I'd pick him at number 1. He's that special as a receiver.
I don't know about number 1. As much as I love him, I think Caleb Williams would be the number 1 pick, potentially, depending on how he pans out this year too. I mean, we just saw Cliff Kingsbury going over there too.
When it comes to quarterback, though, I have no worries for Ohio State. I think either one will probably get in there and do just as well. And I'm not saying I think it's just a testament to what Ryan Day has built. I mean, the receiving and what Brian Hartline has done with that receiver room. I mean,
yeah, and you look at it right now. Like every single recruiting class, Ohio State is getting multiple 5-star receivers.
One or 2 of the top guys in each class.
Exactly. And like just whatever, Brian Hartline is building a huge foundation. And as of right now, I know you might argue with this, Ohio State is the wide receiver U as of right now. Looking at all the recruits that they're getting, the guys that they have in the league right now, from Terry McLaurin to Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave this past year, and other guys like Paris Campbell, Noah Brown, and Curtis Samuel. Like, there's so many guys in the league that, as of right now, in more recent years, the past 5 years, Ohio State has lived up to that wide receiver unit.
But have you ever had a wide receiver win a Heisman?
Okay, well, you know what? Don't even. Let's not even talk about that. But how you
your arch rival had a wide receiver that won a Heisman.
But you bringing up Brian Hartline's a good point with bringing in all these receivers, because Brian Hartline's stepping in to the offensive coordinator role this upcoming year, which I think a lot of Ohio State fans are excited about, because especially in the Michigan game this past year, including myself, a lot of Ohio State fans were very pissed off that Ryan Day was making horrible play calls, that we weren't going downfield the way we should have. We were running the same plays back to back to back, kept trying to give all these wide receiver little bubble screens, little halfback screens, and people were upset. People were upset that we weren't switching it up. We weren't going more up tempo. And I think that Ryan Day, like Jake Crane said a little back ago when we talked about Bama's offense, Ryan Day is still going to have a say in the offense, 100%.
Yeah.
It's not going to change, but Brian Hartline is going to have that authority where he can say no. And Brian Hartline is still going to be able to make play calls and see those adjustments that fans are wanting to see.
And, you know, I'm not worried when it comes to Ohio State's pass game. It's the run game that kind of worries me a little bit. Aren't they losing Travion Henderson?
Nope. Ohio
still
State.
there?
See, that's the thing. That's the other thing too. Ohio State has Travion Henderson coming back. They have Mayan Williams coming back.
They did have a couple of guys to replace on the O-line. I guess it's just because you see, when you think of Ohio State, it's kind of like what you think of Bama the past couple of years. And when I compare Ohio State to Bama, it's just because there's so many similarities between the offenses because they always have great quarterbacks. They always have high-powered offenses with great receivers and mostly great running backs. You know, Bama's running game has kind of stalled the past couple of years, but hopefully it'll be back to where it was. And same thing with Ohio State. I think as the offenses have become more pass-heavy, the run game kind of stalls, not only for Bama but for Ohio State too, because you're so reliant on the pass.
Exactly. And one thing that I want to kind of shift over to too is our running back situation at Ohio State. I don't care what anybody says. I don't care what anyone says about Blake Corum at Michigan, about all these other running back duos. Ohio State next year is going to have the best running back room in all of college football. I'm telling you that right now. Everybody looks at Ohio State wide receivers, and everyone forgets that Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson last year both were injured throughout the whole entire year. And you look at both of their freshman seasons, they had insane freshman years. And even last year, even through the injuries, Mayan Williams and Travion Henderson were phenomenal. And they also have Dallin Hayden, a true freshman. He'll be a sophomore this upcoming year. And Chip Trainum, the transfer from USC from this past year. And then also Evan Pryor, another freshman. They have all these running backs that are coming in. They have 5 running backs that could fight for the starting position. Obviously, it's going to shift between Mayan Williams, Travion Henderson, and Dallin Hayden. But their running back room is so stacked. And yes, they lost. They're losing Luke Weipler, Paris Johnson, DeJuan Jones on the offensive line. But I mean, if some guys can step up and fill those offensive line positions, Ohio State's running back room is going to be the best in the nation.
I don't question their running back room. I don't question, the guys that are there. I just question the execution because, like you said, they were running a lot of the same plays, and it was catching up to them. They weren't able to create any momentum. Now in the Georgia game, of course, they were able to, outmatch Georgia's defense. But against Michigan, I mean, Michigan was able to stop the run game, and like I mentioned, a couple minutes earlier, they became more reliant on the pass, and then that's where it caught up to them, and that's where I think Ohio State can get better at. And for me, where it boils down to Ohio State, and where it's going to always boil down for me, being an SEC fan, I mean, seeing the success the SEC has had, it's going to boil down to in the trenches and on defense. I mean, Ohio State's defense was much improved last year from the previous years.
Oh yeah, 100%.
But it still wasn't to the level that I don't think Ohio State's fan would have liked. I mean, giving up how many points to Michigan? 45.
Yeah, exactly.
Giving up 42 to Georgia. I mean, Georgia had a great offense, but
I think the thing where we're going to start to see the change though too is exactly with coaching, because a lot of fans, like I said, after the Michigan game, were really upset with Ryan Day. And I think that when the Georgia game came around, even though we lost in the way that we did, I think myself and a lot of Ohio State fans were very pleased to see the changes that Ryan Day made from that Michigan game going into that Georgia game. Because you could clearly see some big changes. And Ryan Day was on fire. Going into that game, you saw him coming off the bus, walking to the game. He's jumping up and down, screaming, like going up to all these fans and like he was in the perfect mindset going into that game. And just like every single game he needs to, because last year Ohio State versus Maryland. Maryland should have not been anywhere near as close to Ohio State as they were in that game. But they were. And I think it just comes down to coaching. And there definitely has to be some changes. And Jim Knowles needs to make some huge changes on defense because Ohio State corners, I don't know what it is, but last year specifically, Ohio State corners will play 10, 15 yards off the receiver on a 3rd and 4. And that's not, it's first down every time.
And I think, on defense as well, I think it was also Ohio State's lack of ability to get to the quarterback and lack of ability to stop the run game. Because against Michigan, I mean, before Blake Corum got hurt, they were running all over him, and then it was the same way the year prior with whoever the running back was I forget his name, but
Hassan Haskins.
Hassan Haskins, and I think it boils down to the defense and in the trenches, because I mean, and I hate to say this, but this might make some Ohio State fans mad, but Michigan right now, if I had to pick a team that is more like the SEC in terms of what they do up front and what they do on defense in the Big Ten, it's Michigan. Michigan is willing to bully people up front and willing to be physical on defense, and has been the biggest difference, I think, in the last 2 years between Ohio State and Michigan. And I think that's where Ohio State needs to get better at, especially, you look at the schedule this year. I'm not going to dog on Ohio State's schedule. I mean, SEC teams play the similar type of schedule makeup where they play a couple of cupcakes and then they get into conference play. But you might have a little bit of trouble at Notre Dame, but other than that, I don't see the schedule being too hard for Ohio State.
I think their biggest battles this year, obviously at Michigan, last game of the year, that's the biggest battle. And I think the second hardest game, honestly, is going to be at Wisconsin.
Yeah.
And because Luke Fickell going into Wisconsin, I mean, like he's gonna be throwing a right hand punch right at us at Camp Randall Stadium, October 28th. And like we were just talking about, Ohio State's defense needs to make some adjustments. Like, yes, they have huge guys coming back. Tommy Eichenberg, who's one of the best linebackers in college football, he's coming back next year. Steel Chambers, have JT Tomenlaw, who had that insane game against Penn State. Same with Jack Sawyer, some true freshmen that'll step up next year like Sonny Styles, and some other guys that'll have to play some key roles. But it'll be interesting to see those adjustments be made, because I mean, the last couple of years you haven't seen any huge, like, you look back to the years where there was Chase Young, Jeff Okudah, and all these other big, like the Bosa brothers, all these big name defensive guys that were like top draft picks, elite at their craft. And now in more recent years, you haven't seen guys like that at Ohio State that are literally like, yes, we have good defensive guys, but like, we're losing Zach Harrison, Tanner McAllister, a couple of guys. I
can't name a defensive guy that Ohio State is losing right now.
Exactly.
That's just
and that's how it is. I mean, on offense, you can obviously name C.J. Stroud and like Paris Johnson Jr., like a couple really notable guys. But on the defensive side, like, I hate to say it, but I know Ohio State has a couple guys that are going in the draft, like Cameron Brown, Ronnie Hickman, Zach Harrison. Like, those guys are going to be really late draft picks. They're not guys that are even going to be drafted in the top 3 rounds, I think. And as an Ohio State fan, it hurts me to say that and admit to that, but the Ohio State defense is what needs to step up, especially if we want to beat TTUN and all these other schools, like at Wisconsin next year. And it's going to be rough. And it all comes down to Ryan Day, Jim Knowles, our DC, going into his second year. And I mean, we'll see the adjustments in the spring game on Saturday.
Now, when it comes to Ohio State's schedule, I got an unexpected. I think this game might be an unexpected battle for Ohio State, but I saw what they did to South Alabama in the New Orleans Bowl. With Western Kentucky, if they get Austin Reed back, and that could be. I'm not saying it would be, I'm not saying they would beat Ohio State, but
it can be close, and they're
the type of offense that can attack people through the ground or through the air. They had over like 500 yards. 500 cajillion yards against South Alabama's defense. And
for me, that's why I'm happy that Ohio State's playing them week 3. Because I think if we were playing Western Kentucky week 1, we would have a hell lot more of a battle than having them week 3. Because, I mean, at least we get to ease in a little bit more, because Indiana, I think that should be a cakewalk. We'll see. Youngstown State week 2 should definitely be a cakewalk.
Yeah.
And then that'll just ease us into Western Kentucky, and then Notre Dame the following week, and then towards.
And earlier in one of our, I think our second episode, we did the conference predictions, and right now I'm sticking to my guns. I'm sticking to Michigan, but Ohio State will still be right there. They always will be. They have the brand name. We talk about that all the time as brand name. It recruits itself. Ohio State recruits itself. I mean, you just look at some of the cats they got in their recruiting class this year. I mean, Brandon Ennis was a guy I desperately wanted at Bama, but he chose Ohio State, Cornell Tate was a guy that I know Tennessee fans wanted a lot. Those are two high-profile receivers that they got. Jelani Thurman was a guy that. Now they did miss out on some prospects. I feel like they could have snagged, like Keon Keeley, who
Exactly.
was the number one edge who
Some
flipped,
big defensive
who flipped
guys.
from Notre Dame to Alabama, but.
I mean, then again, though, Ohio State also, they filled some needs, too, on the transfer portal, getting Jahad Carter, a safety from Syracuse who was, I'm pretty sure, all-pro his freshman year. And then same with Davison, however the hell you say his last name, from Ole Miss, the cornerback. And they were both four-star transfer guys. And I'm really excited for Davison Igbinosun, however you say his name. Like, I'm excited to see him in the spring game on Saturday, see how he pans out. A couple other guys like Victor Cutler, the transfer tackle from ULM. That's a Group of Five school, and it'll be interesting to see how he pans out transferring from a Group of Five school to a prestigious school like Ohio State with his size and whatnot. But I'm really excited to see how these new guys come in and see what kind of grit they have, and that'll definitely be shown a little bit in the spring game.
Yeah, I'm excited to see some Big Ten football this year. I'll probably watch it a little bit more this year now that I know you and like. But I always watch Ohio State when they're on. I always watch Michigan when they're on. I will want to watch Wisconsin a lot more now. Penn State always up there, and of course Maryland has Tua's brother, who I watch a lot. So but it's going to boil down to November 25th in Ann Arbor. It's going to boil down to that game when it comes to the Big Ten East. And right now I have Michigan winning it for a third straight year. But like I said, there's a lot.
Say what you want.
There's a lot to be excited about when it comes to Ohio State, especially on offense. Like I said, I think they'll be fine with quarterback. Whoever you pick, they'll be developed. And
for me personally, I just think after seeing the way that Ryan Day came into that Georgia game, like I already said earlier, he came in on fire, and we lost that game. I think right now, Ryan Day, the past 2 years, lost to Michigan, did not see what we wanted to see as fans. And I think that he is just as pissed off as all the fans are. And I think that going into this year, it's a stretch because I can say it all I want, but I seriously think that the Ohio State offense is going to blow out just about every team. Yeah, there's going to be struggles, but I have a feeling that we're going to blow out every single team, including Michigan, because of how pissed off and on fire Ryan Day is. And then also Kyle McCord or Devin Brown, new quarterback coming in. I have a feeling Kyle McCord is going to take these reins over and be like, hell no, this isn't happening again. And literally do some nasty stuff to J.J. McCarthy in the butt. But.
Some exciting stuff to look forward to for Ohio State. And they've gotten off to a hot start in their 2024 recruiting class. They just got a linebacker committed yesterday.
Yep.
And a receiver
linebacker.
And a receiver committed the other day, one of the top receivers in this. So, a lot to like about Ohio State. Ohio State's going to always be there, just like Alabama, just like Georgia. It's like the big three. That's the three you talk about at the beginning of every season right now. And, say what you want about Michigan. Michigan might be the favorites right now, but Ohio State will still be there. Like I said, it sells itself, and Ohio State will be in the top 5 this year no matter what they do.
Oh, 100%. 100%. And this next recruiting class already, the 2 top 5 receivers, top 5 running back, top 5 offensive linemen, a couple other guys that are really high up there. You're going to get those types of recruiting classes at any school like Ohio State, Bama, Michigan, Georgia. And, so it'll be really interesting to see what happens this Saturday at Ohio State spring game. I'm really excited for it. I don't know if Bryant's as excited as
I might watch a little bit of it, but I'm more worried about the South spring game because then I have to work it. But
but it'll be really exciting to see. Now we're going to shift over to a little bit of pre-draft stuff with the draft coming up in a couple weeks. And
Yeah, so it was reported earlier this week that several teams were looking to try and trade up for the number 3 pick with Arizona. And I don't think the teams were mentioned, but if I had to guess, probably maybe Atlanta in there somewhere, maybe Detroit, maybe looking to trade up if a specific quarterback is there. Seattle, same ordeal. The top 10 is very interesting because you do have these 4 quarterbacks, and as much as I like Hendon Hooker from Tennessee, I mean, but I don't think the dude is worthy of a first round grade, especially he's 25 years old. He's coming off an ACL injury, and the offense he was in was just not. It was a lot of predetermined stuff. He knew where he was going when the ball was snapped. He didn't. I mean, not a lot of reads, and like he ran when he had to, but for the most part, he kind of just sat there in the pocket and really. Now, granted, Tennessee was good enough to where he could do that, and he didn't get pressured all that much, but under pressure. So anyway, when going back to the top 10, you have these 4 and maybe 5 quarterbacks if somebody decides to take a huge gamble on Hendon Hooker. But you don't really. I mean, you kind of know how the top 4 is going to play out. Like it's going to be
Bryce Young,
Bryce
CJ
Young,
Stroud, yeah.
Will Anderson's going to go top 5. Maybe Jalen Carter. He's been falling a little bit, sliding a little bit. But after that, it really kind of remains a mystery because which of these teams is willing to take a gamble on Will Levis or Anthony Richardson? Which team would be willing to give the Cardinals, at number 3? Say you're the Falcons at 8, you're gonna have to give up at least a first round pick next year and maybe a player or something like that to try and trade up from 8 to 3.
Yeah, exactly. And I mean, I think it's going to be interesting. I was just reading something on The Athletic, and they're saying there's talks about the Ravens potentially trying to trade Lamar at the draft.
I don't think that's happening now that they've signed Odell.
I don't think that's going to happen either, but I was just reading talks about them potentially trading with the Colts, and Lamar goes to the Colts. And
I've even seen stuff about the Jets, I was listening to Get Up on ESPN this morning. They were talking about the Jets, Aaron Rodgers situation. We'll get more into that in a few minutes. But the timeline for the deal is pretty much by the draft. I mean, they could still get something done afterwards, but the timeline was by the draft. And I've seen stuff where if the Jets don't, the Jets have, I think, 2 first round picks in this year's draft.
Yep.
If they don't land a deal with Aaron Rodgers by the draft, they could potentially trade up and go get, Will Levis or Anthony Richardson. I've also seen, the Titans are no longer sold on Malik Willis. They could be a potential player. There's a lot of teams here that could potentially trade up. There's Tampa Bay, who just signed Baker Mayfield for a 1-year deal, but obviously he's not their long-term solution. So many things that the Cardinals are in a great position to trade back. And say what you will about the Cardinals, I joke with my friend Hunter a lot because he's a Cardinals fan. I call them a tire fire all the time because that's what I think they are right now. But no, the Cardinals are in a great position to bargain, and they could sit there and take Will Anderson at 3, or they could trade back and get a haul and see what they could do with that. And I've also seen stuff where the Texans might not be sold on a quarterback if the one they want is not there.
And I was just telling Bryant not too long ago before we started the podcast, there was talks yesterday about the Bears potentially trading back to pick 17 or something like that with the Steelers and trading back to get another couple, maybe second round, third round picks because of the fact that the Bears aren't really sold on a specific player and they still believe that they can get who they want further back in the first round. I mean, that's how a lot of these teams are right now. I feel like a lot of teams are content with a couple different players. And
this draft is really weird because other than the top 2 quarterbacks, Bryce Young and CJ Stroud, and other than Will Anderson and Jalen Carter, say what you will about off the field issues, I think he's still one of the best players in the draft. There's not really anybody that sets themselves apart from anybody else.
Oh yeah, 100%.
To me, there's the top 4 players that I just mentioned. Will Anderson, Jalen Carter, Bryce Young, C.J. Stroud. Then there's a gap, and then I think there's everybody else.
Exactly.
And after that top 5, you really kind of just guess. And I had somebody tell me the other day, I think this is a weak draft class, and for me, I think this is more of a defensive draft class. The receiver depth is not there. Offensive line is kind of iffy, but you still have some guys that
There's a couple good guys, but
Yeah.
there's very few. Like there's probably 3 or 4 guys that are capable of being drafted in the first round. Like obviously Paris Johnson, Peter Skrnowski from Northwestern, a couple other guys, but it's like there's not that many standoffish guys where you're like, I need that guy. He's a franchise offensive lineman right there. Like,
and see, somebody also told me yesterday, you know, why don't some of these teams just wait and try and get Caleb Williams next year, wait for next year's draft class? And I said, well, you know, this year's draft class, by this time last year, we knew who the heavy hitters and 2023 were going to be for this draft class. We knew Bryce Young and C.J. Stroud were going to be at the top when it comes
and
to
same with
quarterback.
Will Anderson.
And Will Levis. We knew Will Anderson was going to be in the top 5 somewhere, or potentially number 1. We knew Jalen Carter was going to be the same. By this time, we're in the same, like, say, and now, if we're talking about next year, other than Caleb Williams and maybe Marvin Harrison Jr.,
there's not
you
much.
really don't know who's top guys are.
Yeah,
I mean,
exactly.
Drake May is pretty good, but you've only seen him for 1 season, and you never know, anything can happen. I like Drake May. I think there's a gap between Caleb Williams and Marvin Harrison, and there's everybody else right now. You know, Jalen Milroe could come out of nowhere and, you know, shine his junior year at Bama and potentially come out. Bo Nix isn't, you know, I got a lot of things to say about Bo Nix. I mean, I don't like him, but he's been playing pretty well at Oregon. But this draft class, I mean, both like this year and next year, I think is just kind of
mid.
I mean, I wouldn't want to say mid, but like you just don't.
It's not as exciting as previous draft classes.
But I think it is exciting because you could see a lot of trades. You could see, you know, guys, teams willing to maybe trade up and take a guy, you know, take a chance on a guy or something like that. I don't know. Like it's just. I mean, I'm always excited for draft season. I love the draft process. So now when it comes to the Jets and the Packers, they have still not made a deal yet.
Exactly.
I mean, it was pretty much. I think it was about a month ago, or a little bit under a month ago, when Aaron Rodgers said on Pat McAfee that he intends to play for the Jets. And according to something I saw on Twitter this morning, they haven't talked to each other in weeks about compensation. The Packers want that 13th overall pick from the Jets. Jets don't want to give it up. They don't feel like, you know, it's worth it, especially for a guy who's
towards the end of his
career.
Yeah, exactly. For me, it scares me too because I was reading a thing yesterday as a Bears fan, and say Aaron Rodgers does go to the Jets, he does go somewhere. As a Bears fan, it makes me nervous because I don't see that much in Jordan Love, and the Packers could be so bad next year that they end up getting Caleb Williams. And for me, that scares the hell out of me as a Bears fan. But I mean,
well, right now the Packers have all the leverage, I believe, because the Jets are the only team involved.
Exactly.
Now you've heard sprinkled rumors about San Francisco potentially in on it, but the Packers have said they're not going to trade him to an NFC team. But the Packers have all the leverage, and they've already said they're going to start Jordan Love with or without Aaron Rodgers.
Oh, yeah.
And that's just the way it's going to be. They're tired of it. The drama. And quite frankly, I am. I mean, I'm tired of hearing about Aaron Rodgers every time I turn on a sports show. But no, there hasn't been a deal made yet, and people are like, what's going on? The Jets if the Jets don't get this deal done, it's on them and they're screwed. I wouldn't say they're screwed because they could potentially get one of the quarterbacks next year in the draft. But they're in win now mode, I believe. Say what you will about the quarterback room with Zach Wilson. Let's forget about quarterback now. Around them, what they have built is pretty damn awesome. I mean, they got, you know, receivers. They got Garrett Wilson. They got Alan Lazard. They got some other guys.
Corey Davis.
Yeah,
a couple big name guys.
Running back, they got Breece Hall.
Yeah, but I want to shift that over though from running backs and us talking about drama with Aaron Rodgers. I don't know if you heard this morning, but Saquon denied his franchise tag.
Oh yeah, I saw that too.
A couple hours ago, and that's causing some drama in New York because New York doesn't want to pay him, and a couple different outlets are reporting that New York doesn't have an interest in paying Saquon at all. So
the running back position is not as valuable as it used to be.
I agree, but I mean,
other than Derrick Henry, you really don't see, you know, a franchise
running back because they just
running
get
back.
injured too much. It's like, why wait? It's like people with Bijan Robinson right now saying that he should be a top 10 pick. Hell no, he shouldn't. You can wait till the 3rd, 4th, 5th, 6th round to get a running back that will develop and be just fine.
Yeah, I mean,
instead of wasting a
running
first-round
backs
pick on
are like, and I hate to say this because I love the running back position. I love seeing guys, in the trenches work and get, and and I just love seeing running backs work. But still though, they are, I don't want to say expendable, but they are replaceable because there are so many talented running backs out there. And really, to make a run game work, you need good blocking, and a lot of teams out there have that. So
yeah, it's definitely not as valued as it used to be. Like teams spending like multiple first round.
And like Derrick Henry's really the only exception because it's freaking Derrick Henry. But I mean, and another thing that happened yesterday, the Falcons traded for Jeff Okudah.
I like that. I like that.
Well, my buddy Cody got excited about it yesterday, saying defense, but I don't know like what to think about it. I'm not a Falcons fan, but I was talking with him yesterday, and we were talking about there's a reason you only traded a 5th.
That's true. But for me, I mean, he was injured. He didn't. I think he still has a very high ceiling. I think he hasn't reached his peak yet.
But you drafted the guy 3rd overall. 3 years ago, I mean, in 2020, he's still on his rookie deal, and you decided to trade him for only a 5th. I mean, that speaks volumes to me. Now he could
pan out. He
could pan out, and he won't have to be the main. Like he won't have to be the main corner in the Falcons defense. They got AJ Terrell. They got a couple other guys. They got Jesse.
Traded for Jesse Bates.
They got Jesse Bates. So.
I mean, we talk about it every week. This upcoming NFL season is going to be extremely interesting.
It's gonna be interesting. No Tom Brady,
especially with the draft coming up too. I think during the draft, I have a feeling there's going to be a huge blockbuster trade in the top 7 picks. I definitely have a feeling about that.
During the draft, I think
I think the Bears are definitely going to trade back pick 9. I think once it gets to pick 8, once their pick comes, I have a feeling they're going to trade back.
Like I said, number 3 with Arizona is where to watch. Whether it's this week, next week, or during the draft, that's really what. And I would even go as far to say Houston as well. I mean, but I think if Houston doesn't take a quarterback, they're not going to trade back. They're going to take Will Anderson. I think that's just what they would. If they weren't going to take a quarterback, that's who they take. But like I said, watch Arizona at 3. That's where I feel like if a deal is going to be made again in the top 10, it's going to be there. So
yeah, I definitely agree, and I think for now that's all we have for episode 6 of Back of the Endzone podcast.
Yep. So we enjoyed this episode. We hope you guys enjoyed it with us. Remember to like, follow, share, go follow our socials. Connect with us and give us any advice you have. I mean, if you want somebody on the podcast that we don't, help us get them on, or if you want to be on it,
let us know. Hell yeah.
Let us know. I mean,
hit us up, and I mean, we're open to anything, open to any possibilities or ideas. So, thank you for tuning in to Back to the Endzone podcast. This is it, baby.